Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson, and in this episode we're going to do a balayage technique, one that I use every single day nearly. And the reason I use it is because it's such a good colour corrective technique. It's a great technique for creating multi-dimensional blondes in no time at all. This is a very express technique that I can get done in under half an hour, and I charge a substantial amount of money for it, including toner around £100. For half an hour's work, that is an absolute winner in my world. So if you take something away from this, any little tips or tricks, then don't forget to share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel, leave me a thumbs up. Most of all, leave me a comment. I love speaking to you guys and backwards and forwards on the chat with any technical questions you might have. Anyway, enjoy the video, and I'll see you again next Sunday for the Life of Hair.
So what I've done here is I've tried to mimic something that we all see quite a lot, which is a box dye or a home colour. I simply coloured this mannequin head twice with level 4 tint, just to create a kind of a patchy, uneven, oversaturated look. So the first things first, we pre-section the hair into 4 sections or 4 quadrants. So straight down the middle to the crown area, and then straight down to the back of the ear. Clip that section out of the way and repeat on the other side, and then straight down the back. As you can just see there was quite a lot of the patchy result that you kind of come to expect from people doing box dye specifically. So just to sort of mimic pour application as much as possible, when I applied this I just poured it on the mannequin head and I just simply combed it through to sort of create patches that were missing. So first section here, we've got about 2.5 inches, so from the nape up to the bottom of the occipital bone. And with the weave that we're using, it's a very deep weave. It goes in and out of the section, and that's really important to the technique. So make sure your weaves go down and up, down and up. I've taken 4 strands out of this section. The importance of taking the deep weaves is that you have hair in the middle of this section up by the roots that doesn't have any product on it. The saturation in that area is fairly low, and this gives us nice transition between the 2 colours. So we'll have a softer transition higher up to the root, and then where there's more lightener, more bleach towards the ends, we're going to get more lift out of the colour, and we're going to see a much more definite result. So it's a bit like the analogy of spreading butter. If you get butter on a knife and you put it onto a piece of bread, it goes from thick to thin. Well, in this case, the thick end is the ends of the hair, and the thinner bit is higher up, closer to the roots. And that is what gives us a beautifully seamless transition without too much work. So I start my saturation approximately halfway down to 2/3 of the way down the head. And then, as you saw, I just simply backhand the product up towards the roots using my hands. It's really important to use deep sections with this technique, so you can use that weaving in and out technique to its best advantage. So make sure you really dig in and dig out, and what that actually creates is tiny little triangles within the sections, and that gives us a much softer, much more subtle blend later on. One thing I will say about this technique, every time you start a new section, it's quite important that you generally wipe your hands. Wiping your hands will ensure that you keep the bleach exactly where you want it. Not letting it spread all over the hair is very important. You might also note that I'm not using cotton wool or cling film. Obviously, by all means, you could use cling film, you could use foil if you wanted more lift or more incubation from the lightener, from the bleach, then yes, definitely cover it. I'm going to repeat this process on this mannequin head at some other point, just to show you like a colour corrective journey with this technique. But in this instance, I don't need it. I don't cover all that many of my balayages. I like just to use the right consistency of product. I mix everything at a 1 to 1.5 ratio, and that is the ratio that I find allows me to lay the hair down onto hair that isn't painted and not get any pressing or bleeding or whatever. In previous videos people have sort of said, well, this is madness, you're bound to get the hair you know, bleach in places you don't want it, but it's not the case at all. Give it a try. 1 to 1.5 ratio. Make sure you use scales to mix. It's really important that you're very accurate when you're doing something like this. So the big section on the top here now, just four weaves out of that. As you can see now, the depth of the section's going right through almost in some places. That very, very deep section. And that maximizes softness. Sometimes with balayages, I think it's the hair we don't paint that is almost more important than the hair we do paint. Obviously, where we want lots of lightness and full saturation on these very ends, we need to work it through, and the product needs to go all the way through the hair. But further up the head, closer towards the roots, we really don't want that to be the case, because otherwise it will just look chunky and stripy. We want it to subtly blend from, you know, a lighter, more transitional color into the lighter ends, and this way you don't have to do a lot of work with your toner afterwards. You can just put one toner on. In this instance, I'm going to put a level 8N Redken Shades EQ toner over the whole thing, and that's going to give me all the toning that I'm going to do for this particular instance. I'm not having to do root stretches or root shadows to disperse lines that I'm creating. Working through the sides in exactly the same fashion that we've worked through the back there, taking a horizontal section that's 2.5 inches in depth and making those deep weaves into the hair. Picking up some product, starting around 2/3 of the way up the head with my full saturation, and then blending that transitional colour up towards the roots to create extra softness. And again, which part of your hand you use is entirely up to you. Sometimes I use my palm, sometimes I use the back of my hand, sometimes I just use one finger. It's just about making sure that when you are moving the product up the hair, that you're not pressing too hard. Equally, you know, the hair's not really bending under the tension that you're putting on it, but equally you've got enough pressure on the hair to get the product moving successfully up the hair and giving you that area of transition. One thing that I have noted in the past when I've taught this to people is that they're not firm enough with moving the hair up the head, and then it just seems like they've done sort of stripes in the hair. There's no blending. So that's the area, really, this part now that I'm doing, as you see. Blending that product up the hair is where all the practice comes in for this technique, because you don't want that full saturation area that's 3/4 of the way up the head just to sit there like 3 or 4 blobs in the hair. You need to practice this bit, getting that product evenly spread up the head. Here's a great tip. If the product on the hair looks the same from root to tip, then it will lift at the same rate, and that will give you great results. But if it looks thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom's going to outlift the top, and then your results are going to look solid towards the ends without the transition that you were looking for. It is really, really important, guys, that you kind of spend that time practicing that blending element and looking for even consistency. Think of it like a cake. You wouldn't ice a cake and not cover certain parts. And here we have the finished result. Step 1 of my color correction journey with this mannequin head. And just a quick tip is that it's really, really important that you use the right lightener. I'm using a clay lightener and 20 volume.
So there we have it, a very, very simple technique, as you saw, just using your hand just to blend the product back up to the roots. And you don't even need a brush. I know I use the brush, but sometimes I just put my hand in the pot, rub it through the ends, hold my section tight, and back comb it up to the roots. So simple, easy to use. It's just a dream technique, and it's really great for those multi-dimensional balayage techniques. And I'll see you again next Sunday for the Life of Hair.